Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of Mi'kmaq people. Welcome to our virtual events series and happy spring. We were just discussing the weather, a very Nova Scotia and East Coast thing to do. This is the second virtual event this month, the month of March, that plays host to International Women's Day. Appropriate to mention again, I think, in light of our panelists this evening and our topic. My name is Una Proudfoot, and I'm the Executive Director of Alumni Affairs in the Office of Advancement at Acadia. I'm thankful to be here this evening with three powerhouse women, Mayor Wendy Donovan of Wolfville, Mayor Pam Mood of Yarmouth, class of 1982, and Deputy Mayor of Kings County, Emily Lutz, class of 2020, to discuss the importance of municipal government in general and women in leadership roles. I'll introduce our speakers and then we'll get into the process for this evening. Wendy Donovan was first elected to Wolfville Town Council as a councillor in 2012 and served 2 terms before running for mayor in 2020. From 1995 to 2018, she was an owner and partner in DMA Planning and Management Services, a recreation and library planning firm that worked with municipalities across Canada. And prior to that, she worked for several municipal recreation departments in Ontario. Wendy has an undergraduate and graduate degrees in human kinetics and leisure studies from the University of Waterloo. She is currently president of the Wolfville Rotary of Mud Creek. Welcome, Wendy. Pam Mood is a proud Acadia graduate who is serving her 3rd term as mayor of the town of Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. She is past president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities and Federation of Canadian Municipalities Board Director and past chair of the Rural Innovation District. She is currently team champion on the One Nova Scotia Second 5 Years team, working with MIT in Boston to bring economic growth to Nova Scotia. Pam is also the architect of the acclaimed All Hands on Deck initiative and the 100 Meals in 100 Days program, each building community on a deeper level. A true visionary leader, she gives full credit to those who do the work on the journey to do better. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce Emily Lutz, who lives in Rockland, Nova Scotia, with her husband and 3 children. She is a 7th generation member of the Lutz family farm and apple and peach farm. Emily has served 1 4-year term representing District 7 as both councillor and deputy mayor from 2016 to 2020 and was re-elected in 2020 as councillor and deputy mayor. Emily's lifelong passion for building resilient communities led her to earn a degree in political science and philosophy from St. Thomas University, followed by a master's at Acadia in social and political thought with a focus on municipal government in 2020. Emily is currently president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities and loves serving her community through her work on council and beyond. So back to that comment of being surrounded by powerhouse women this evening. So thank you very much for joining. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. We ask that everybody keep your microphones muted to avoid background noise, which is rather ironic as my dog chews a bone under my feet. And please disable your video as well. It helps with bandwidth, and I always joke that I have no idea what that means, but apparently it's a thing. And just down the hallway are the bathrooms on your right. If you'd like to ask questions, please feel free to come off mute and ask your question when we get to sort of that free-flowing Q&A portion of the presentation, or you can launch your chat function and write your question in the chat function. I'll do my best to keep an eye on questions there so that I can read them out loud for you if that's not something you're comfortable in doing. And then finally, we have entered all of your names into a draw, and we'll announce the winner of an Acadia alumni swag package at the end of the program. And in the off chance that I've drawn somebody's name who's not on the call, we have gone to a 2nd and a 3rd. So hopefully we'll get somebody in line to receive that in the mail. So without any further chit chat from me, I'm going to begin by asking some questions of our panelists. And as I say, I have a fairly long list of them, but we welcome interaction and engagement from everyone else who is on the call. So please, by all means, use your chat function, like I say, or raise your hand or come off mute and pose your question. So I'll start by asking each of you to share with the audience a bit about who you are and why you do what you do and how you got to where you are. So I'll give you a second to process those 3 things. So a little bit about who you are, why you do what you do, and how you got to where you are today. And you know what? We'll start with Mayor Mood from Yarmouth.
Okay. All hands on deck, I guess. I am Pam Mood, and in '82, I was Pam Eamon. So some people will know me by that name. I am the mother of 3. I have a kinesiologist, an entrepreneur, and a PhD. under my belt. I wish I had the marks they had to get where they are today. I'm a brand new grandmother, so I'm pretty proud of that. And as you said, I'm the mayor of the town of Yarmouth. I do what I do. Boy, that's a tangled web. I do what I do because somebody has to take on local government, because it's great federally and provincially. It's amazing, tremendously important work that's done. But in the end, everything that happens at the local level. And what I have seen, and everything I say, because I know we're taped, everything I say it with the utmost respect. But what I've seen is that, sometimes people forget about local politics, and we're not seeing what I would call powerhouse people in those positions. And so it's important to build everything from the ground up. How did I get here? My childhood growing up, I followed my grandfather around. He was the mayor of Yarmouth for my entire childhood. I followed him around in the days where you wore white knee socks, white patent shoes that were too tight, and a crinoline that just itched every part of your body like nobody's business. And I watched him. He was the son of Lebanese immigrants, and service is just in our blood. I can say that without question. And I watched him in the family grocery store, where he would pat the wooden crate when somebody would come in and yell at him. And he would say, "Sit down in my office, let's have a conversation." And they would walk away shaking hands and very friendly. And I couldn't articulate it back then, but that power to make a difference in somebody's life. So when I was 11 years old, after following him everywhere, Rotary dinners and the lieutenant governor's balls, all those things, I remember terrified. I walked up to him with a pain in my stomach, and I looked up and I said, "Jiddi, one day when you're not the mayor, I'm going to be the mayor." And Jiddi is Arabic for Grampy. And I thought, he is surely, in my heart of hearts, he is going to say, "Don't be ridiculous, that's for the boys." And he didn't. He said, "Young lady, I don't doubt that you will, but you do it with integrity." And that's all he said to me. And I ran the 2 blocks home and I said, Mom, Jiddi said I can be the mayor, but we have to find integrity because I'm not allowed to do it without her." That's because I didn't know at 11 years old. I didn't even say the word right. And my mom just looked at me and she said, "Oh, don't you worry about her. She'll show up when you need her." And that's what she said. So 40 years later, the promises you make to somebody kind of come back. And, I just watched my town just dig itself deeper and deeper into a hole, not anybody's fault, perfect storm. And I had some gentlemen, I use that term loosely, say, "You can't be the mayor, you have no experience." And my answer was, experience got us in this mess, leadership's going to get us out. So yep, there's my name on the ballot. Don't forget to put your X there. And so here I am, 8 years later, having a blast. Woohoo!
Well, what a great intro. And I must say, Mayor Mood, if there's one thing I know about you, and I've seen many, many times, is your one-liners. And I don't know if you write them, if they come off the cuff, if you've read them before, I have no idea. But your one-liners,
They just happen.
That's incredible.
And I know I know which one you're talking about in particular. Yeah. Talk about that later. Remind me.
Okay, I will for sure. Thank you for that. And let's go over to Deputy Mayor Lutz. Over to you next.
Thanks, Una. And Pam, that story always makes me cry. Like I've heard you tell that story like 5 or 6 times now, and every single time I get like a little tear about the integrity. I just love that. So unlike Pam, I didn't come from an overly political family, or I didn't think I did until I really sat down and started thinking about it one day. Looking back, my parents were always involved in everything. It just wasn't necessarily political. My dad was, like I said, like Una said in my intro, a 7th generation member of a family farm. And my mom was the mom that was, the band parent, folding the band uniforms, putting the instruments away, fundraising for my dance. And so my mom was very involved and active in our community and our Women's Institute. And my dad, in a different sense, was political in that he was the president of the International Fruit Tree Association and the fruit growers. So I grew up sort of watching my parents be very involved and always giving back. And how I started on council. So in 2015, I was on maternity leave, and Justin Trudeau had just won his election in 2015 and become the prime minister. And I was at home and I'd been listening to the radio and watching the swearing in. And when he announced the gender balanced cabinet, like it was one of those sort of lightning rod moments in my life where, and again, like I could cry again talking about it, but just seeing a place for me at the table at the highest order of government in this country and someone prioritizing that for me, people like me, was really transformative. And so that was a big factor in me having the confidence or me feeling like I was welcome to undertake a career in politics. And so also being on maternity leave, I listened to a lot of CBC, and things in Kings County, where I'm the deputy mayor, were not going all that well municipally. A lot of dysfunction, and we were always in the news. And characterized as an old boys club, and I think we were. And so when the 2016 election rolled around, I sort of thought, like, maybe I'll go for it. I had some experience working as a municipal intern in Cumberland County, and I sort of pitched it to my parents, and they were like, "Ooh, do you really want to do that? Does that really, do you really want to put yourself out there?" And they were really supportive, but I think they were nervous for me because we all know what it's like to be a woman in political life, and it's not always the kindest place to be. So yeah, that was sort of how I got involved. And when I moved back home to do my master's at Acadia, I'd been living in New Brunswick. I brought my boyfriend, who's now my husband, with me, and he tried out farming, and he really liked farming. And while I had kind of envisioned myself finishing my master's and maybe going off to Ottawa and being the chief of staff to the prime minister or something like that, I realized that we were gonna, as soon as my husband picked up farming, I thought, we're here, like, this is it. And so what can I do here in my community that's going to make it a better place and make it a place I want to spend the rest of my life and I want to raise my kids? And how am I going to address some of the issues that maybe didn't make it the best place growing up for me, or a place that I didn't see myself living? So yeah, it's just, I found a way to be involved in politics while also staying where I came from, which is a little town, a little community, I guess, outside Berwick, and that's where I landed here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emily, for that. And it's interesting that you spoke about your parents first and how they weren't necessarily political in the sense of being on a council, but their involvement in the community and the level of involvement that happens with our community members. And their name doesn't have to be on a ballot. They don't need to be voted into a position to be able to be active and advocates within communities, whether they're big communities or small communities. So certainly appreciate seeing that from your parents' perspectives. Mayor Donovan, over to you. And before you get started, I'm just going to quickly state the obvious, point out the obvious, that both Pam and Emily, of course, are alum of Acadia. And while Mayor Donovan did not go to Acadia, she, of course, is the mayor of the town of Wolfville, where our beloved university lives. And so a key part of the conversation in terms of where we're going to go this evening. So over to you, Mayor Donovan.
Thank you. And not only did I not go to Acadia, but my background is entirely different from either Pam's or Emily. So interesting. I can't say my parents were ever involved in any kind of politics. I remember my dad was an Irish immigrant after the Second World War. And I remember it being as a little kid driving in the car, there must have been an election on, and I said, "Who do we vote for?" And he said, "We vote for conservatives, but we don't ever talk about it." So I said, okay. And that was the only political conversation that ever happened in my house. However, as Una said, my background is recreation. I worked in municipal recreation for municipalities. And in my first job was a very small rural community that I worked directly for. They were all farmers. I'm a city girl, so also a new awakening for me. And then I moved to City of North York and City of Burlington, much bigger. Mel Lastman, which some of you may know, was the mayor of North York at the time. So huge eye opener to me about what big city mayors might be like. But I was always, not only did I get to work closely with people on council, whether they were on steering committees that I might have had in the recreation department, but I was fascinated by them. I used to have election parties with other staff on election night, like who's going to get in? I never felt that way about any other level of government, but municipal government always fascinated me. So but still never thought about being on a council. My stepdaughter came to Acadia in 2003, I believe. She was part of the double cohort in Ontario. She, a late year birthday, didn't feel comfortable going to a big university. We had always wanted to, we were looking at South Shore at that time to move to the South Shore. We brought Madeline here to settle her in. And we said, whoa, this place is so great. And it's not very far drive to the South Shore. So we bought a house. We thought, Madeline could live in it in her last 3 years. We'll see if we can, because we had a business. We worked across Canada. Can we work from Wolfville? We'll try it during, we'll have an address in Nova Scotia. And the day Madeline graduated from Acadia, we ripped the back of the house off and started a big renovation and moved in, still thinking we were just going to operate our business from here. Because the house was bought so Madeline could go to Acadia, we didn't ever think about buying a house that was just 2 blocks from Acadia. Well, we discovered that brought some interesting experiences. And the night that some students coming home from the Ville pulled our 4-foot high picket fence that I think had been there for 30 years out of its moorings and threw it on Gasborough. I was alone, Jim was traveling somewhere. And I wrote to Mayor Stead and I said, what the is going on? And next day he said, I think you should be on, I have a committee, I'm putting you on a committee. And the next is history, my kind of love and respect for municipal government, and a moment in time that brought me literally 3 o'clock in the morning. I wrote Mayor Stead and I said, what is this? I'm new to Wolfville and my fence is lying on Gasborough. You might want to take a look. And that led to being on the Mayor's Committee for Community Living and led me to running for election in 2012. The rest is history.
The rest is history.
History and progress.
Interesting that you've all referenced, the situation that the municipality that you reach in was in when you considered running, and so that may come up again in a future question. And Wendy, you pointed out that you had a different background from the other two, and I suspect you're going to have a different answer, and you've started to segue into it a little bit already to the next question. And that question is, what does Acadia mean to you? So how about I just start with Mayor Donovan, because I think you just sort of started a little bit on that one, and understanding, of course, that the angle for the question is very different coming to you than it is possibly anyway for Emily and Pam. But I'll let you start off with that one, Wendy.
I obviously don't have, it's not my alma mater. I don't have a connection to it that you would have. I truly believe that it is, and Una will know this. We used to say we were a university in a small town, or a town with a university. I've tried to change that in my talking, that it is we are a town, we have a university, we have a business community, and we have a very vibrant tourist group. And so to me, Acadia is one of, if I think of it like a shopping center, that I'm very sad to hear they are going the way of the dodo. We're not going to have shopping centers because people are doing it online, and I love to shop, but it is an anchor in our town. And I see Acadia as much more than students who bring a vibrancy to the town and obviously work and employment into the town. I am really keen, and I was really keen on a comment you made, Mayor Mood, about your work with Boston, because I think there is a new type of business opportunity and entrepreneur, and I think we are just so well placed because Acadia is here. I can't even necessarily articulate what that new business model or business thing is. I suspect it's different than what I did, but maybe not. I worked in the public sector, and then I started my own company. But I've talked to people of all ages. I talked to one fellow who is an engineer, works in Halifax, and said, I would like to live in Wolfville and I could make 5 widgets. Don't know what a widget is, but I mean, it was a term, that are very high end, that only 5 people want to buy. But I could, with the technology we have, I could make those widgets. I could make a lot of money. I could live in Wolfville and I could access the services of Acadia. So to me, aside from, you know, the benefits that we get as residents because Acadia is there, the lifelong learning program, access to facilities, the spaces where we have our deep roots and devour activities, all those things are great as a resident. As the mayor, I truly want to lever whatever we can in Wolfville, in Acadia, so that Wolfville is it retains its students who want to do something different and out there, and they can because of the technology. I see Acadia just got a grant for technology yesterday. Good for them. That's a big part of how I see Acadia. It's a partner in things that we may not even realize we could be partners.
Absolutely. Thank you, Wendy, for that, and very forward thinking, and I certainly look forward to it. Deputy Mayor Lutz, over to you. What does Acadia mean to you?
So Acadia is someone who grew up about half an hour from Wolfville. It was always peripheral in my life as someone from Berwick, but wasn't a central tenet of my life. And it certainly shaped my childhood in a couple of different ways, but not in a central one. So as a kid, we used to access services at Acadia sometimes, or we'd go to the pool. And we often came to football games. Once my brothers got into football, we used to come down and watch the Axemen play, which was a lot of fun. But when it came time for me to go to university, I never considered Acadia because it was far too close to home and I needed to just get away. So I ended up doing my undergrad in Fredericton, and then did my municipal internship in Cumberland County. And I started thinking, well, I wanted to do some more post-secondary, but wasn't sure whereabouts. So I had applied to law school at Dal and gotten in, and then I had applied to Acadia to do my master's. And I was having a really tough time picking between the two. And ultimately, the pull of the valley sort of brought me home. And when I started my master's at Acadia, it was September 2013. And you might remember Una saying at the beginning that when I finished, it was 2020. So it was a long old journey for me. I defended my master's thesis in December of 2019, pregnant with my 3rd child. So when I started, I didn't have any children. So that might have been one of the reasons it took so long. And so it was just a wonderful experience to attend Acadia as a grad student. And I think it's much different. I wasn't pulling out picket fences and throwing them on the road as a master's student and as someone who was rather professional. I got to, I was still working on my thesis when I was elected for the first time. And like you said, I wrote my thesis on municipal government and actually wrote it on Wolfville. And so how Wolfville developed as a community versus New Minas. And anyone who's been to the two communities, you'd know they're very different. And I looked at how they both had municipal planning, again, like really focused in on the municipal government part and how that shaped the way they developed over time. And so the intersection of me being elected and me being a parent during the 7 years that I worked on my thesis, and really God bless Dr. Andrew Bureau, because without him, I wouldn't be an alumni of Acadia. I would just be, still an unfinished thesis. And he really did help push me over the line. And the night I handed in my thesis, I was actually elected vice president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. It was all happening at once. I was actually at the Westin in Halifax, where Pam was being sworn in as president. I was being sworn in as vice president, and I pulled an all-nighter, finished my thesis, emailed it in, printed it off at the hotel at the Westin from our municipal conference, and dropped it off in Wolfville on my way home, and then defended it a couple months later. So it was really an adventure for me to get my degree, and I had a great experience as a mature student and an adult living in Wolfville, which was really nice.
That's fantastic, and it's wonderful to hear. Kudos for Dr. Bureau, certainly a tremendous person, and have heard lots of good things about him. And yeah, absolutely, having babies and writing a master's thesis is always a good idea, isn't it? Yeah.
Many
Great.
sleepless nights for more than one reason.
Or I remember in mine, when I finished mine, my two sons were quite young at the time, and they said, "Are you finished that stupid thing yet?" That's what it became. The thesis became known as that stupid thing. Yeah.
Yes.
So over to you, Mayor Mood, to bring us back a little bit in time and talk to us about what Acadia means to you.
Yeah, mine's quite different. So, and I'm full disclosure, I can't give you anything big and bold. I can tell you that at 60 years of age, I still get excited when people say Acadia, because I just stand so proud that I'm an Acadia alumni. As a child, there we go again, driving back and forth to meetings with my grandfather, we would always drive by Acadia because there was no highway back then. That's how old I am, right? There was no highways. So we would drive by, and I can still remember that feeling that my jaw would drop and I would look at it like I was looking at a movie star, or my whole heart was captured by that big white building and that huge lawn. And when I decided, I mean, the next step after high school is university, and there was no question. I didn't consider any other schools. It was Acadia. Acadia treated me well. The Anvil treated me very good. I'm sure that there were many more picket fences, Mayor, that I may have had a hand in, but it's just
But not that one.
it's such an amazing school, and it's not so big that you get lost. And there was the personal touch. I admit I have a degree in political science that I don't think I've ever used. Maybe I haven't, I just don't realize it. But yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot to that story. I just love Acadia, and my oldest is a graduate of there too. So there was no question to where she was going. From her, not me.
Well, we'll take it. And when it came time for my sons, I didn't say a word. I thought they'll make their decision, but I'll really try not to pressure them. An interesting side point on that, the road being the only road to get to, Halifax when you were going for your meetings, when they put the highway in, that is one of the reasons I'm told that Tower was built, because the university wanted to have a tall building that you would see from the 101 now that you weren't driving through the town of Wolfville. So it was like, don't forget there's a university here, and they built Tower. That's what I'm told is the story behind that. So there you go.
That's good to know.
So yeah, tidbits, little facts that I'll tell you. I'm like Cliff Clavin over here. I'll keep you filled with all kinds of it. So question for you, I'm going to just toss it out and see who wants to take a go at it. Do you see municipal government as being more important, less important, or equal to the other levels of government?
Yeah, it's more important. There's no question. I'm going to say equal because everybody does something different. We all do something different, but I'm just a big believer. It's true. Everything rolls out at the local level. No matter what the federal government does, no matter what the provincial government does, it still has to roll out in our communities. And sometimes I think folks forget that. Whether it's healthcare or education or anything else, it all rolls out locally. And if you don't have a strong local government, you know what, you just can't grow the community. It's impossible. So that's my answers are short, but there you go. Right.
Absolutely. And I will just offer the opportunity rather for Emily and Wendy to add on if you care to.
Yeah, I think it's the most important. And I think mostly because when you open your door and you walk out onto your street, everything is municipal. And I think it has the most impact on your day-to-day lives, how you move through your community, whether it's walking on the sidewalk or driving your car. So much of that is municipal. And I think how you navigate your community and how you experience your community affects your life and affects your happiness. If you live in sort of a dark, desolate, pavement, expanse, you don't experience vitality, and you don't have the opportunity, you know, if you live in a car-centered place, you don't have the opportunity to run into your neighbors, and you don't have the opportunity to have face-to-face chats with people. But if you live in a community like Wolfville, where you have, you know, shops close to the street and active transportation and safe community to walk through, then you see other people, and then you develop relationships. And all of that, I think, is fostered through good municipal government, through land use planning, and through design and urban design that creates, I think, can create actually happier lives for people. So I think that's the main reason municipal government is most important, because it has a direct relationship to how you experience the world, and therefore how you experience joy.
Wonderful. Wendy.
I agree completely. However, I don't think that residents always understand that it's the most important, or even what we do. I'm sure we've all experienced, I know that when I campaign at the door, people are sometimes like, well, what do you do? And then so you start to list. They know that because they see the town trucks with the logo, they know they probably do the snow and the parks, but what else do you do? And I think that's a concern. I had a group of students from Wolfville School the other day, because they're doing poetry readings at our council tomorrow night. And I was asked, they were sitting at the council table, and I asked them what they thought we did here. And they kind of hit a blank, and someone said, well, maybe the snow and maybe the roads. And someone said the library. And I said, no, not really. The school, no, not really. But you know, then we started to talk about things that were important in their life. You know, do you like to have clean water? Do you like to have, you know, your sewer taken care of? That got some giggles. Any of you go to camp or to any of the parks or recreation programs? What do you do with your garbage every 2 weeks? They didn't know. And you could say, well, they're elementary school kids, but I find, you know, I think they probably knew as much as people at the door. So I'm sometimes concerned, because I think it's a really, really important level. I am concerned that people don't know that it's important. And Emily will know that this is a bee in my bonnet. I'm concerned that other levels of government don't know that we are a mature government and that we are important. And so so that's something that's gotten my craw the last little while. But yeah, I think that we have a bit of work to do to make sure that people understand, you know, how much worse they'd be off if they did not have municipal government.
I always say, Wendy, you can use this too. I always say, when they ask me, what do you do? I say, when you go home tonight, can you have a drink of water and flush your toilet from 2 different sources? You're welcome. Right? Because that's what we do, the basic services, right?
Absolutely. And it's far and wide for sure. And I remember back to many a time when my father was taking off, and I'd say to Mom, where's Dad going? Well, he's going to town hall for the town council meeting. And at the time never meant much to me, you know, and then he would always come back fuming for whatever reason. So that was always fun. So I'm gonna take the question in a little bit, a little different angle at this point in time. And I'm gonna try to pose the question in as general as possible, because I don't know what you'll bring to the conversation, but I'll word it in such a way that I say, what was or possibly is one of the biggest challenges or one of the biggest roadblocks, or maybe sort of big experience, I don't want to say worst experience, that you've had as women in politics? So I'm not trying to lead you to the water, but I mean, personally speaking, I know I could tell you plenty. So I just want to know if there's anything that you're willing to share, sort of an aha moment, or a turning point for you, or an educational moment for you where you kind of went, okay, you know, something's got to change, or I'm going to keep trucking on, or any of those kind of reactions. And I met with silence.
Yeah, well, I've got all kinds. I just don't want to start first.
Let me go. Una kind of told us this might be the kind of question, and so I really have struggled trying to think about an answer to this when I'm walking my dog or when I'm going to sleep, and I keep coming up blank. And it's not because there are not a lot of challenges as a counselor or as a mayor, but they are not because I'm a woman. And, you know, like we are literally the poster child counselor for, we have 6 of 7 who are women on this council. Last council, we had 5 of 7. So clearly women do a good job of getting themselves on council. I think, you know, they work hard. They actually knock on doors and they get in. And it's not that that men don't run. We have had, you know, we had, I think the first 2 times ago when we had 5 women elected, there were 9 or 10 who ran, or maybe even 11 at one point, and a similar, maybe a bit smaller number this time. So, you know, women have done well in this community, and I think that they work hard at getting themselves elected. And in fact, I would say that when I listen to you and when I think of the women who are on our council, they are well known in the community because they are on, and it is the women in our community who often are on the home and school. So we have one counselor who's been very active in the parent-teacher home and school, whatever it's called. They're very active in their church communities. They're very active in social housing and those communities so that people know them. And so they feel comfortable, you know, working in groups. So I think I honestly could not come up with an answer to say what was a challenge as a woman. I do think being on council is really challenging. I think it's challenging if you're a young mother. I think it's challenging if you are retired and you do have a life. I think it's challenging if you have a full-time job. I had to leave the consulting work because I just couldn't juggle these weird times that I was having council meetings and my travel schedule when other councils wanted me to be in Fredericton or Toronto or Edmonton. So it was a decision I made that this was a good time for me to get out of consulting. So I think if municipal council is important, then, and maybe this is through Pam and Emily and NSFM, we have to have a conversation about why is council so hard? We give ourselves a stipend, which I looked up tonight to see what a stipend was. It's an allowance. So again, you know, we get an allowance, and we are not employees. We don't get benefits. We don't get pension plans. But I know even as a counselor, I was working 20 hours a week. I don't know how, Una, you can have a full-time job and do that work without killing yourself. Emily, you've got 3 young kids. I don't know how you do it. I couldn't have done it when I had 2 young kids. Anyways, I think being a counselor is a challenge. It is worthy of more attention. But as a woman, I don't think I've had it any harder than anybody else. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Wendy. Appreciate that very much. Yeah.
So, yeah. So I'll tell you my aha moment. And, you know, we all say, when you know better, you do better, whether it's, you know, Black Lives Matter or anything we can put out there. When you know better, you do better. So I just was brought up with the whole, you know, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. I didn't think there were any barriers to me. So I got elected. And of course, within an hour of being elected, the phone rings and it's CBC. And the person on the other end said, I'd like to congratulate you, Mayor Mood, and I'd like to interview you as one of 3 new woman mayors that got elected. And I said, and I feel so bad now, I said, you need to call when you want to talk to a good mayor. That's it. And I hung up because I couldn't understand. What do you mean? Do you think I'm here because I'm a woman? So I didn't understand the struggle because I had never bumped into it. But I will say this, that I am up front and center. I put in far too many hours. And so what I've gotten is, and I'm gonna say this, everything I do is based on that promise so many years ago. It's integrity. And I would never make a decision or tell somebody something that I don't believe that I can do or that I don't believe is the right thing, which means you have to make the tough decisions. The difference between a man making the tough decision and a woman making the tough decision is that they don't attack my decision. They attack my weight, my hair, my clothing. I have never heard anybody ever say, has he got the same suit jacket on twice in a month? But if I wear the same dress twice, and the other piece is, for some reason, people think it's okay to abuse. So when I say we're not going to continue to pay for dispatchers from the town for the entire region, a 6,700 person town, paying for dispatch for like 60 or 70,000 people. If your municipality wants dispatch, pay for it. We're not going to do it, which should have been good for you, Mayor. Thank you for saving your taxpayers, but it wasn't. I had to leave my home twice under police watch with death threats. It was horrific, and I do it, but I also want people to know that death threat, name calling, abuse, it's never going to change. And I've said this publicly to the people in town. If you think calling me names and threatening my life is going to change how I make decisions, you got the wrong woman. So you may as well go take your abuse and take it somewhere else. That's just how I do business. And I feel sad for those people that they think it's okay. So I say it's been tough, but it hasn't been tough because I just don't let it.
Yeah, so I'm going to build off that a little bit and just say that I don't think the job of counselor or politician should only be for thick-skinned people who can take abuse. And that's what frustrates me about, we have this attitude that, well, if you're going to run, you better be ready to take some crap. And I think that's wrong, because I consider myself a very soft-hearted and emotional person. And I think that that's okay. And I think that those are some of my strengths. That being said, I have become tougher skinned and perhaps harder hearted over the last 5 years than I ever intended myself to be. But I think we just have this assumption, and I think that deters women from running, because they think they have to be this steely, hard Thatcher-esque woman who can take all kinds of crap and be okay with it. And that's an unrealistic expectation for us to have of women. And it's not fair. And we are held to a different standard. And I will say, as a young mother, what I found out my first day on the job was that the position of counselor was not designed for someone like me. And that for some people, I was not welcome around the table, and I was never welcomed. And, you know, if they were still around the table today, they would still not welcome me to be there or see my perspective as valid, because I'm young and I'm a woman. And that's because I'm from a place that has a traditionally old boys club mentality of council. And even though we made huge strides in our last election, those attitudes prevailed, and I was not taken seriously by some people, and never will be taken seriously. It has nothing to do with my ideas, nothing to do with anything beyond the fact of what I look like and who I am. And so I found from day one, the structure of the position and the structure of government was not made for me. The meetings were not at great times. I wasn't able to hold down a full-time job, and council salaries are not paid. They're not paid for someone to make a living wage. So despite it being, again, like Mayor Donovan said, a 20, 30, sometimes 40-hour a week position, you are not paid for that amount. And so for someone who, when I was first elected, I was 26. I put my career on hold because, you know, I always say it's not a real job. It is a real job, but I always say, like, there's no advancement, there's no promotion, there's no raise in salary unless you give it to yourself and then you take a bunch of crap from the public. It's something that I put my financial life on hold for. It is something that I put my career life on hold for, because I don't see myself doing it for forever, for eternity. I'm 31 now, right? So I've got lots of years ahead of me to do other different things. So it's designed for someone who is retired or owns their own business, who has ultimate flexibility and all the time in the world on their hands to contribute. And we shouldn't restrict care for community and contribution to community for only those privileged enough to be able to hold those positions, whether it's through having access to funds to run an election, or only the people that are welcomed by those community leaders to sit at the table as other generally older men. So that's what I find frustrating, and I've done my best in my 5 years on council, and I think I've been effective at just changing the structure, changing how we do business to just be a little bit more friendly to people who aren't the same old who've always been there. So for example, we changed provincial legislation to allow parental accommodations. Before my council, there had not been a woman sitting on council to have a baby while sitting in office. But that happened. It wasn't me. I was the second. But both of those happened on my council in the last term. And so we amended the Municipal Government Act to allow for parents to be able to welcome a new child into their family and not be penalized by their council, and not have to ask their council for permission to be absent from meetings. So that was huge. You know, we talk about family accommodation. So we now have a policy that says breastfeeding is allowed in council. When my colleague first welcomed her baby onto council, we had like our counselor colleagues saying, well, we're not going to allow breastfeeding in here, are we? Like, it was just not a welcoming or friendly environment. It is now, I think, and I think we saw that in the last election. We saw more women run, we saw more young people run, and not just in Kings County, but across the province. And I think it's because there's been so much attention on the fact that municipal government is not welcoming to young people or to women, and I think that has reverberated, and we had more women elected in the last election in 2020 than ever before in the province of Nova Scotia. And as more women get elected, more councils change and more structures change and more policies change, and it gets a little bit easier every time. But it is a slog, and it's a lot better now than it was, but it's still not perfect.
Thank you for that, Emily. And you have you've started down into what I'm going to go with next as a question, but I do want to say to folks, we are, believe it or not, already 47 minutes into this. So if you have questions, please post them in the chat function so that I can have a look and see if I can pose them for you if you don't want to come off your microphone and pose them yourselves. But what I'll do in the meantime while I'm waiting is ask each of you, and as I say, Emily, you may have started into answering this one by asking each of you, what would you say is one of your biggest successes?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think that everything Emily said, put that in a package, and that is the expectation of women in politics, and on top of that we aren't going to get anything done. Because I have seen that, just watch her fail. And let me tell you this then, you started it when you introduced me, the all hands on deck. That's one of my biggest accomplishments, but it's a community accomplishment. And I remember distinctly two, I say gentlemen, but I don't mean that word, two of the guys on my council that were just hateful, for lack of a better word. And I said, I need to set up this town hall. How many chairs should I set up? Now I was kind of talking out loud to myself. And I remember one of them said, well, you're pretty new, so there'll probably be a lot of people excited. So set up 30 chairs. And I turned around, I looked at the guy behind him and I said, set up 400. And I remember them laughing, but 500 people showed up to that event. And 500 people, and in the end, at the end of the week, 1,000 people put their name on that list. And the question was, what can you do as a community member to move your community forward? Because it's yours. And so for me, my biggest success has been to understand that I don't have to do it all. I need to lead it all, and I need to hand it off to the community, because it's their community and they will take care of their community. So it's been pretty cool. And I better say my quote, because I know you're waiting for it. I was on the radio and somebody said, who does she think she is? Does she think that she can tell us to pick up garbage? Because I was like, if you're walking down the street and see garbage, pick it up. And that's when I said, yeah, because I'm your mayor, not your mother. Period. They didn't like it, but I think it went viral. Whoops.
I think it went viral as well.
Best line ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your passion in general, Pam, but for your passion in answering that question. That's great. And that the numbers show up for the all hands on deck is just incredible. So well done, you. Emily or Wendy, your biggest success?
I mean, just going back to my last point, I'd say my biggest success was breastfeeding in council next to the person who told me it could never be done. You know, and next to the person who told me I should stay home with my kids, and that's where women belong, right? When you're, I guess I would just say, thriving in an environment where I feel like I was set up to fail, and changing the conversation and just becoming a more inclusive and diverse place to be and to be able to contribute to your community, because I was able to do it. And then to get elected a second time and then be continually recognized by my council as deputy mayor for the entirety of my term on council, and then to be elected to the board of the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities against someone who'd already held the position for years as a 6-month pregnant mom, like standing up on stage, giving my speech, not thinking I had a chance, but I was going to put my name forward anyway, just in case. And to win a seat on that board, and then to be vice president, and then to be elected president in December of last year. I mean, that just to be supported and reinforced and included by the people who make up the patchwork quilt of municipal government in this province. And I just think we're making so much progress, and I feel incredibly proud to be maybe even like a tiny little iota of that progress. It's been great.
Thank you, Emily. And sure as I'm sitting here, it's way more than just a tiny little iota. We have a question in the chat aimed directly at you, Emily, but I'm going to wait for Wendy to answer the question on your biggest success.
Yeah, good, thanks. I've been trying to think of that as the others are talking. I guess successes, I think the realization when I was a counselor that a counselor, you know, so much of a counselor's life is you're on a committee or you come to council and you read your agenda, and it's very predictable. As long as you go to meetings and vote, that's what you should do. But there were some things in the town that brought me to council. So I realized that if you stick your neck out, I know I held a meeting early in my first term, that I rented a hall myself. I was told this is not a council meeting, you're on your own. All of council came, but you know, and the police came, and Acadia came, and a lot of residents came, and I realized I was up there not as councillor Wendy Donovan, but just Wendy Donovan residents, because nobody wanted to say they were part of this. It turned out to be a really successful evening. A lot of good things, policies have come out of that. I felt good. I probably felt better because I had done it on my own than because I did it as a kind of with the support of my council behind me. That's probably led me to a strong belief that I have now as mayor, that I believe, and maybe this is the woman in me coming out, I believe that while all councillors we should not vote the same way, I believe we are a team, and I believe we should support each other when we can and work as a group to the betterment of our community, and not just say, you know, that's Wendy's thing, let's see if she fails. And I know that it is my intent to work very hard in the next 3.5 years as mayor of this term, to see that we can become a council that likes each other. We don't have to all agree with each other, but we have to realize that we have a very common agenda, and the best way we can carry out that agenda is if we can work, you know, what was the old book, play nicely in the sandbox together. I do think that's a female thing that we bring to it. It's how we are on committees. And maybe we'll see. I think that we are better together than divided. So that's my success.
Thank you, Wendy. And that's I smile with that response and with that suggestion about how working together is so much better than working apart. So absolutely appreciate that. The question posed for Emily is from Natalie. Thank you, Natalie, for your question. She says, you've been such a powerful and transformative voice for women in local politics in recent years. What's next as a point of focus for you in supporting young women who are interested in pursuing a career in the political landscape here in Nova Scotia?
So I would say the reason that I've been a powerful and transformative voice is because I've been surrounded by powerful and transformative women. And I would not have been successful in any of my endeavors were it not for late night conversations with Pam on the phone and, reaching out to other women municipal colleagues across the province and having that network, because it is so much easier when there are other women in your corner and in your circle and who are having the same experiences that you are. And so I say what's next is probably getting more women elected at all levels of government. And then more importantly than getting them elected is supporting them once they're in there, because one thing to get them elected is another to throw them to the lion's den and expect for them to just be able to fend them off. So finding ways to support women when they're in those roles is crucial. And I think starting now for the next municipal election is key. So as we all know, or maybe we don't all know, but in the last election, Berwick went from a council that was relatively gender diverse to being back to all male. And I don't think that's because the women councillors weren't supported, but they were just sort of ready to retire. And so now we have an all-male council. And I know some of the women in that community are thinking like, oh, if I'd just known there was going to be no women, I would have put my name forward. And so having those conversations now and saying you'd be such a good community member, you'd be such a good person on council, maybe you should try out this committee, maybe you should start to get a feel for what the work looks like. And yeah, just starting now so that in 2023, when the next municipal election rolls around, we can have more women on the ballot, and then more women encouraging more women to go forward. And I think that's just crucial to just start now and support them through their campaigns, donate to their campaigns, and just be able. You wouldn't believe the amount of phone calls I got before the last election from women all over the province who said, I was talking to my mayor about running, and they suggested I call you because you seem to know what it's like to be a young woman on council. And so we must have been like 20 or 30 calls from Cape Breton to Barrington. And that was really awesome. So just supporting women to run. And as for me, who knows what comes next? I have aspirations, and I'd love to continue to be a voice for women in politics. We'll see what happens.
Wonderful. Pam, do you want to respond? Do you have a comment?
You can see it, can't you?
Yeah.
This last election, we spent the last 4 years. It was brutal. It was with it's one thing men, and there are some amazing men that we work with, amazing men, but there are the old boys club, and they just can't understand. So you know what, locally, just like they did throughout the entire province, throughout the entire country, we gathered women together. We set up just like, let's have pizza or coffee and chat about how important this is and how we can support you. And we got twice as many women elected, but make no mistake, the men were upset. And when I say upset, upset enough to write in a complaint, official complaints about me supporting women. And that's pathetic. I don't know how else to say it, pathetic, because it's fear that drives that, right? So we just need to support each other.
And supporting each other, absolutely, in whatever that looks like, in whatever demographic that looks like. And Emily, you've referred to it a couple of times, and both, well, all of you have in some sense, and it's the age piece of it as well. And so having younger people run and younger voices at the table is just as critical. You have all commented on the balance of the amount of work and being able to do another job at the same time is a challenge, absolutely. Young people who want to start families, it is a balancing act for sure, but having young voices at the table when decisions are being made and policies are being developed is just as critical. Diversity of thought, regardless of what it looks like, needs to be at the forefront for sure. So we are right at 7 o'clock. I could have gone on for, I don't know, a couple of more hours of questions I've got listed here. So I appreciate your responses. I appreciate your, as I said, your passion, your candor, and for sharing your time with us this evening. So I'll wrap up very quickly by first of all announcing that our winner of the Acadia swag bag, who is on the call this evening, is Stacy, and I believe it's a hyphenated last name, Scott Nicholson. You are the winner of our Acadia swag that we will be sending out to you. So congratulations and thank you for joining us this evening. And thank you everyone else for taking an hour out of your evening. I hope you're experiencing lovely weather like we are here in Nova Scotia, no matter where you are. And just to tell you that our next virtual event will be in 2 weeks' time on April 12th. And the next one is House Call, and it is a Q&A with our very own Dr. Trevor Jane, who is the Talk with Doc on CBC, a physician in PEI. And so he'll be with us to talk to us about his career and his time at Acadia and in between. So hope you can join us for that. Thank you, Mayor Donovan. Thank you, Mayor Mood. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lutz. It's been a pleasure. And thank you everyone for coming.
Thanks, Una.
Thanks, Una.
Thank you.